Hey everybody, Dragon here with the Season 6 recap. We're going to go over the Masteries, runes, and item sets that are going to be with the 7 champions that I main. Namely, AD Jungle Malzahar, AP Kog'maw, Support Vel'koz, Support Orianna, Marksman Azir, Tank Karthus, and AP Gnar. So, let's hop right into it. The one people are most interested in here, of course, is AD Jungle Malzahar. That's what a lot of people are here subbed for. So here's the breakdown of what's going on. We're going to start with Masteries, move on to item sets, and then go to runes. So in the Mastery section, we find that going for these 40%, 5% CDR and the Meditation Masteries, similar to how we went Utility in the past, is going to provide the maximum amount of ability to summon Voidlings and maximize the utility on Colored Void and Nethergrasp. So with that in mind, Intelligence and Meditation are like sort of most important masteries we care about, and when you go down here, then Thunderlord's Decree is the only one that makes sense because you have no shields or burst to be able to make use of either of the other 2 keystones that are available. With that in mind, with these 18 points allotted here, we then have the decision between splitting our points into these trees. However, reduced summoner spells, health regen, total health, and shielding is all kind of lame for AD Malzahar. Similarly, a little bit of attack damage, it's like 15 attack damage by level 18, which is kind of lame. Oppressor, Bounty Hunter, and Vampirism are all alright, but compared to the benefit that you can get with Explorer for both ganking and objective control, they seem to pale by comparison. For this reason, we split our points into a 6-18-6 split. Now, moving on to the item sets, we want to be able to hit that 45% CDR cap. With that in mind, and I'm saying that way too many times now, we start with the Hunter's Talisman, which will provide us ample mana regeneration with the mana runes taken out, or mana potions taken out. If you're starting on the side and don't intend to do level 2 dragon, a refillable potion is excellent, because AD Malzahar has an extremely easy time clearing the jungle on the first clear. Like, that still remains true. Currently, and I'm not even optimized it fully yet, I only have to take 3 hits from Booba to fully clear it. You should be starting with Null Zone now instead of Colored Void though, because of it's now a fairly solid choice by comparison because the boot buff is a lot tankier and is much harder to take down. With less mana, it's also more important to maximize the damage for your mana as opposed to simply just trying to maximize speed at the cost of mana, as in the past. If you are intending to do the level 2 dragon, these 3 health potions are going to be your friend. I'm still trying to practice it some more. I'll upload a video about that later on. The build remains mostly the same as I had in the previous season. Go down to Standard Tier of Goddess, into the Stalker's Blade, into Boots of Lucidity. However, there's one new addition, namely that Warriors only gives 10% and Lucidity only gives 10% as well. This is only 20%, and since your runes have now been altered to include 10%, we'll go over that in a moment, you need an additional 10. This is where Caulfield Tower comes in as probably the best CDR item that you're able to get on AD Malzahar outside of Forbidden Idol, but your situational item pool no longer has a Forbidden Idol upgrade. Before, you might have been able to get away with being able to make Twin Shadows out of Forbidden Idol. Actually, I don't think it made out of Forbidden Idol now I think about it. But even then, the only situational item that Malz has are both supportive choices, and you don't really want to commit to those unless you know for sure you're going to be playing a supportive playstyle. Meanwhile, Caulfield is able to upgrade into Umos and Black Cleaver, both which are excellent choices for AD Malz into the late game, even if you have nothing else to upgrade into. You probably shouldn't upgrade into Black Cleaver or Umos immediately. They're situational choices and should be treated as such. Death Stat should proc on Voidlings and should grant you a lot of additional, like, it says dealing physical damage heals for 12% of the damage dealt, but for some reason it doesn't apply on the Voidlings. It may be a bug until it gets resolved or until it's fixed. I recommend not building Death Stats, however. Otherwise, you might as well be building any of the other myriad items. Umos is actually also back again as a situational item because it doesn't have any kind of crit reduction, or crit chance, which makes it, or attack speed for that matter, which makes it a lot more useful compared to how it was before. It does have attack speed on the active, but even with that component, it still has like utility in itself, especially for dueling purposes. Your Last Whispers now also gets transformed into 2 different choices, which we're able to use effectively based on the situation. Most of the others remain the same. Back to the runes. As I mentioned, the runes have now been tailored back to how they were earlier in Season 5, where you have had 10% cooldown reduction at the beginning of the game. I've switched the mana regen scaling into flat mana regen so I can more effectively do the level 2 dragon, but it's something that I still have to practice, and you can probably, until that's done, you should probably just stick with scaling mana regen per level. or whatever other seals you're using, because they're the most malleable part. You can have armor if you want. I like mana regen a lot more though. The remainder of the runes, the scaling AD, and the movement speed remain the same besides that. Let's move on to the masteries for AP Kog'maw. AP Kog'maw is going to be roughly the same as they had in the previous season. There's just a few slight differences. First, you are going down the offense tree as expected, and as usual for AP Cog, you don't really care about AP that much. If you've read the guide, you understand this, and if you haven't read the guide, I recommend you read the guide. So you're able to have a much stronger laning phase because of the spell web, which is excellent. You have a little bit more power all around. Most of this is probably the same. Deathfire Touch just adds on a little bit. The other two are just kind of lame for for AP Kog'maw. You get a little bit, same thing like usual. Movement speed, mana, dangerous game. You just kind of focus on those kind of standard masteries. It's not much different from last season. We move on to the item set, which is mostly the same. Mana Potion has been replaced with Fairy Charm, which will allow you to upgrade the tier goddess immediately. The reason why you don't get potions is for the same reason as mentioned in the guide, where potions are an investment that AP Kog'maw simply isn't able to make up. Now, over here, things remain the same, except two differences. One, you no longer have to make an Amplifying Tome early like ever, because it is now possible because of the execution on the ultimate to instantly clear minion waves even without any additional AP, and that's excellent. You can rush straight for giant spells in all matchups now. Additionally, you instead of getting the Haunting Guys in this area, you are going to get Chalice of Harmony. And this is because the length of the window of the barrage limit has now increased, so it's more important to regenerate as much mana as possible to increase that much larger. As opposed to now where the base damage and the AP scalings are kind of lame, especially early on, Haunting Guys just isn't as effective as it used to be. It's now a situational item where Chalice used to be over here, or you can go for a more defensive option if those are still causing problems. So go Void Staff as usual, abuse high base damages. Everything else remains roughly equivalent. Runes, Acid Rain, exactly the same, except you no longer have to have the scaling AP runes that may have previously existed here to help you clear minion waves a little earlier than usual, because even without AP, the execution on the ultimate makes it possible. Just remember, hit them with the Void Ooze first. Do not use their ult and then hit them with Void Ooze, because then you won't get the execution bonus. Now let's move on to our next champion, Vel'koz. Support Vel'koz is a very, you had two different choices you were able to go with, and it was a rough choice, but it was one I ended up deciding on. For namely, you could get some Magic Penetration and Deathfire Touch as your two options here, or you could have Intelligence, which gives you more effective DPS, because that's what Vel'koz is a sustained damage poke support, or you could go for Thunderlord's Decree as a magic damage alternative, which provides about an extra 200 burst, especially on the ultimate, which is pretty easy to get the third proc on. Ultimately, I chose Intelligence for two reasons. One, you don't actually get too much AP on support Vel'koz. I'm noticing a theme here among my champions. So Deathfire Touch isn't going to add too much damage. Additionally, most of the stuff that Vel'koz has is AoE or damage over time, and isn't going to be able to proc the full damage that Deathfire Touch is able to provide. By comparison, Thunderlord's Decree is probably going to do more damage overall than Deathfire could have done inside of most team fights, although your poke is going to be a little bit weaker. That's probably an acceptable trade-off. We move on to the item sets. Vel'koz remains, as expected, fairly similar to AP Kog'maw. You go for Fairy Charm because if you're getting hit in lane as support Vel'koz, you're probably not playing Vel'koz correctly. We go for the Frostfang early now and get an early Vision Ward because they're now cheaper and it's easier to get them out. Plus, the Frostfang is built out of the Fairy Charm that you get earlier as a starting item, which is going to give you a lot more mana regen to poke more effectively in lane. Go for Sightstone, Forbidden Idol as a standalone item as usual. Frost Queen's Cream is now built out of both of these, two different CDR items, and you will be able to get one Forbidden Idol into. Oh wait, hold on, I was wrong. I thought that this built out of Forbidden Idol. All right, wow, I suck. Do not get two Forbidden Idols in a row. Those cooldown reduction passives aren't going to stack with each other. Just upgrade it to Varlanomicon instead. This way you'll be able to reach that 45% CDR because you get 10% from here, another 20% from here, and the runes, which we can now go over right now, also give you another 10% straight up. You don't have to go with the scaling CDR runes if you were previously doing that, as addressed inside of my support Vel'koz guide. So keep that in mind. Next we move on to support Orianna. utility supports have gotten massive boosts in this season. Namely, intelligence is going to make sure that uptime on the shield is going to be even bigger than it ever has been in the past. And Windspeaker's Blessing not only makes the Orianna shield substantially stronger, but it makes the target's resistance increase by 15%. And the shield already gives them an additional 30 armor and 30 MR. Which means that not only are they going to get their base values up, the shield value is going to increase by roughly about 3 or 4%. Which means you're giving your targets an additional 4% effective HP. Which becomes really substantial on targets that start becoming tankier. Go down standard masteries, you don't care about offense on Orianna. Natural talent, 15 AP is like an additional like 7 shield strength. It's not strong enough to justify. Over to the support Orianna build. We are going for mostly the same thing as usual with the other champions. Fairy Charm early because you probably shouldn't be getting hit as Vel'koz. I mean not Vel'koz, as a support Orianna. Get Nomad's Medallion. Move into sights now. Forbidden Idol. Then you pick one of these items, because they're all excellent choices early in the game. Zeke's if you're ahead, Talisman is just okay, and Locket if you need an especially early magic resistance bonus for your team, probably against particular AP siege comps. You're getting Boots of Lucidity now, so that way you can hit that 45% cap. Because just like Vel'koz and just like Malzahar, Orianna's Rune Page has this 10% flat CDR. Otherwise, almost everything else has remained identical to how it has previously, and should continue to be one of the strongest utility supports in the game, and probably going to be incredibly powerful now with those masteries. They're going to help them out tremendously. Oh, and like Vel'koz, you get a Forbidden Idol by itself now. This gives you that 10% reduction that's necessary, and helps you keep the mana that you need as you enter into the mid-game. Now, let's move on to the other account. We begin with AP Gnar. AP Gnar is rough again, like a lot of the other champions, largely unchanged. In fact, out of all mages have gotten some changes, supports have changed a bit, marksmen have changed substantially, but tanks have remained roughly the same. And as a hybrid tank marksman who benefits incredibly well from magic penetration, AP Gnar is going to continue with wanting precision, because that gives a lot more power than Piercing Thoughts probably does, which stacks on top of the 45 magic resistance penetration that you already get. I think this increases all the way up to like from 45 to 52 magic pen. That will deal true damage to most targets, even if they are building a little bit of MR. And combined with any additional magic resistance choices that you decide to buy penetration for, you'll be able to continue in that regard. Same thing as usual, you have your offensive start, boots into pots, or you have your defensive start, your cough into pots. Or if you're against a magic opponent, you go boots into pots as well. You have 3 defensive choices. If you're having difficulty inside of your laning phase, you can start going for these. But if you are stomping, or your opponent doesn't look like they're going to outskill, you're trying to shut them down, Sword Boots of the Haunting Guys remains an extremely potent combination to tech into. You should at least build both of these before advancing into the next tier, so like one of these, and then like both of these if necessary. Trying not to spend too much time on just defending, because otherwise your damage is going to fall off, because you won't have the magic penetration to make it work. Situational armor choices, situational magic resistance choices, and some extra tools as necessary. Remains roughly the same. Runes for AP Gnar remain as hybrid penetration for as much as possible, with some magic penetration here and some scaling armor. Magic resistance just has to be teched into, which is a little bit lame, but there's plenty of magic resistance choices, especially with Banshees now being a lot stronger than it has in the past. Tank Karthus is a crowd favorite, and they seem to have gotten a little bit of additional love here. Namely, Tank Karthus has had difficulty keeping their mana up in lane, but meditation is now going to allow them to have the mana they need in order to continue fighting, and that's excellent. With that in mind, you're able to just go straight down to raw defense, and we use Bond of Stone in order to keep your teammates safe, and hopefully not be able to bounce back and forth like that little notification is. Same like a lot of the other champions on here, your lack of mana potions hurts a little bit, and that's what Fairy Charm is there to mitigate, also allowing you for an early tier Goddess Rush. I'm still considering going for health potions early instead. Just it really will depend on like how well that meditation mastery makes up for the lack of mana potions. If it does, then it will be possible to get an HP potion or like even a refillable for Tank Karthus. If it doesn't, it may be better just to continue on with tier Goddesses here. If you're up against Assassin playstyles, it's good to get 2 Ruby Crystals before going into Sword Boots. Otherwise, just grab 1 Ruby Crystal, and then check into Source, then it's time. for TK to really succeed. Then you just go extra items, armor items, magic items. Spectre Cowl is an excellent standalone. You don't always have to upgrade it to Banshees. Banshees is actually pretty good now by comparison, since it gives 35 more and more than when it was only like 15 or 20 compared to before. So it may be worth it now to actually go straight from Spectre into Banshees if up against particular magic, but I usually prefer just going like Spectre into Negatron in those kinds of situations. Marksman Azir is very, very interesting, because you do want to go down offense, that much makes sense, but Fervor of Battle may catch some people off guard. Why Fervor of Battle instead of Deathsire Touch, someone may wonder. Let's read the description real quick. Your basic attacks and spells grant you a stack of Fervor for 5 seconds, up to a maximum of 10 stacks. Each stack adds 1 to 8 bonus physical damage to your basic attacks against champions. So what does that mean for Marksman Azir? Soldiers count as basic attacks. What that means is that your soldiers are actually able to apply the physical damage from Fervor of Battle, which means that by level 18 or so, Fervor of Battle is going to increase your soldier damage hits by 80 physical damage. And even though it's not magical, that's still a hefty amount of extra, like, considering that most targets aren't going to be able to itemize for both magic resistance against you and armor at the same time. They are going to be getting hit by both, like at least one of those, fairly substantially. Additionally to that, it's only 1 mastery point, and you're spending 1 mastery point to get that. That's a pretty big deal, especially compared to only damage over time from Deathfire Touch. That isn't going to even equal close to that, because Marksman Azir doesn't get that much AP overall. Secondly, on top of that, Fervor of Battle's damage does not get mitigated through additional soldiers. So what that means is that when you have 2 soldiers attacking the same target, the second soldier is only going to deal 25% of its damage instead of the full 100%. Fervor of Battle does not encounter this diminishing returns. So if you have 1 soldier dealing damage, it will do 80 damage with Fervor of Battle. If you have 2 soldiers, it will deal 160, instead of only 25%, which would just be 20 damage. Get 3 soldiers and you've increased your physical DPS against a target by 240. Well, not even DPS, because you have, depending on how fast your auto attacks are, and you're really fast on Marksman Azir, I can actually go up to 700 physical damage DPS with 3 soldiers. And that's pretty ridiculous. Unless Riot fixes that, then we should take advantage of it while we can, as Marksman Azir remains. So, onto the item sets. The Dark Seal makes more sense than Doran's Ring, because as a carry, you have a lot of opportunity to snowball out of control, and because it just, the 100 base mana is going to give you more than the base mana regen from Doran's Ring, approximately, and you don't care that much about the additional health, because your range allows you, and your spell map allows you to remain fairly secure unless you're like actively attempting to fight your opponent too hard, which you shouldn't because you're weak early. Now, this part may seem very interesting. A double Nashers? Ginsu's? Why are we taking these choices? The long answer is because the short answer is because it's stat efficient. The long answer involves this long graph that I have here. Using a variety of metrics, testing multiple different scenarios between Nashers, Stingers, Ginsu's, Rylai's, Rabadon's, Void Staff, and etc., it was able to be determined that the most effective gold per damage option was the one that had 2 Nashers, a Ginsu's, a Rylai's, let me add that back in because I took it out earlier, and a Rabadon's as a final situational item if necessary. It's still possible to go for the Void Staff instead of Rylai's if you want to, but it's no longer as useful as before because Rylai's, with the extra attack speed, means that you slow people more often. But as you notice, I do have Void Staff here as an alternative for Rylai's. One notable thing is that Sorcerer Boots is now completely outclassed by Berserker Greaves in terms of the damage that soldiers are dealing, and that there's basically no reason to get Sorcerer Boots on like Marksman Azir any longer compared to the past, even if you have Void Staff available. Situational items remain the same. Rabadon's your big, hefty offense item, and if you already have Void Staff, sorry. Rabadon's is no longer that item. I thought it was. I was thinking it was Season 5. Void Staff is your big, hefty damage item. Rabadon's should only ever be built if you already have a Void Staff, and for no other reason. You just don't have enough AP to benefit enough for like that massive cost, the most expensive item in the game. Void Staff is just superior in terms of what it's able to do for the amount of money that you're spending. I think that Rabadon's might be better if like you're even past full build and like have an additional 2k excess, and you can just sell Void Staff and then buy it. But good luck reaching that point. Runes remain roughly the same. Spell vamp, health per level, attack speed, and scaling ability power. So that ends our covering of what's going on here for Season 6. I hope that's all interesting for you. I haven't updated the guide yet. That's going to take a little bit. Maybe in the next few days I'll get around to that. But thank you for watching.